Here's a good one. I feel that communion in the hand and extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion can foster an attitude of irreverence towards the Blessed Sacrament. Are parish priests able to alter these practices of using extraordinary ministers, I think they're asking, or are we stuck with them? So I think, what they're getting at, communion in the hands and extraordinary ministers, perhaps can contribute to the view of the sacred species of the Holy Eucharist as being profane, and profane in the sense of being ordinary, or something that ordinary people can distribute or touch in an ordinary sense. Not really extraordinary ministers, but ordinary ministers is what they seem to become. Thoughts on that?
As far as communion in the hand, as I understand it, permission, was given to, bishops of our country and probably other parts of the world too, that that enables us to do that. And of course, it has kind of become the widespread practice. So as like pastor, I think it's a little hard to make a policy of just reception on the tongue for a typical parish or parishes like our own, and to kind of enforce that when it's a more stringent approach than really what's permitted or given by the church. And as I understand it, there's it's places or churches where that usually happens, where only reception on the tongue is permitted, is like special places where you may have lots of people coming through. I think that was the practice, and I'm not certain if it still is, the Vatican, where people should just receive on the tongue. Again, that's just to prevent people from coming and taking the Lord and just walking off with the Blessed Sacrament. So I think that's a little harder to, kind of make a standard policy in a parish, like our own, for instance. That being said, I don't know that I'd say that it fosters, less reverence, but I think it can be. I think you could say though that a more careless or thoughtless reception of Holy Communion, can be had with reception on the hand.
Correlation isn't necessarily causation.
Right. But, and I think we have a number of people who do receive very reverently and very conscientiously, on the hand. Although I will say too, like just in the cycle of weekend masses, that may not be the majority, the majority situation. So I think there is something definitely. It's been part of the church's long-standing practice, and probably not without good reason, to reception on the tongue, kneeling if possible. That if we really believe what we say we believe about the Eucharist, then there's something about that makes sense. But again, I don't know that I'd go the other extreme to say that reception on the hand is necessarily bad.
Yeah, that's usually how I put it. Is just because one is better doesn't mean the one is necessarily bad. Like you said, it seems the tradition of the church has always been the reception on the tongue and kneeling, and that's what even some recent saints, have kind of made a calling back to. Even Mother Teresa, mentioned that she would love to see, more people receive on the tongue. And so, if there's anybody out there who's watching this who perhaps is wondering, well, what should I do? Well, first is probably, just don't worry too much, but worry a little bit in the sense of to continue to try and just build that reverence to the Eucharist. Try and, and sometimes the things that we do externally can really have a big influence on what's happening internally. What I've encountered in the schools, because sometimes I've had this question with the school children, is they just don't know how to receive on the tongue. And so, if maybe that's some people who are watching, that they just haven't done it, and maybe it could be a little bit nervous, right? Because it's something new, you're kind of in front of people. I always say if anybody wants to try it, with an unconsecrated host in private, I would be very happy to help them, right? Because it can be a little bit intimidating. So that's certainly always an option. Or you could just go for it, right? The easiest thing to do is you just come up and you keep your hands folded so you don't do the double, where I don't know what to do, where you have your tongue out and your hands out. That's the worst case scenario. Don't do that.
Where Jesus is supposed to go.
And then you just put your tongue out just over your bottom lip, and then we know what to do. So then you just stay right where you are. You can close your eyes even. So if you've ever wanted to try and receive our Lord like that, and try and foster that reverence within your own self, that's certainly a way to try it. So hopefully that's helpful. Or it could just be edited out. I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
We are live after all. So.
That's right. There's no editing.
There's no editing there at all. Yeah, I think maybe one of you said this to me in the past when receiving on the tongue, that if one is going to do it, to just lean the head back a little bit, and it is helpful to close one's eyes a little bit. And I actually just started this a month ago, because I would find that I would subconsciously try to track the host and then be a moving target,
right?
And that's not
tough.
particularly helpful. It's I'm just here to receive, and it is, again, it totally plays to what you said, Father Gunther, of the external disposition, because it does feel a little vulnerable.
And I think that's the idea, that it's kind of this humble, it's sort of this humble, humiliating, in a sense, position that's a little awkward. I have to open my mouth right in front of the priest, so you just feel awkward about that. And actually, just thinking about my own experience growing up, I grew up in a very kind of typical Catholic experience where I learned to receive on the hand, and I think that was the general experience in my own parish. It really was. That's how I received throughout most of my time in the seminary, and it's only been kind of throughout these 13 years as a priest, and just observing people, receive Holy Communion, do I see more and more the wisdom of reception on the tongue. And as I've spoken about before homiletically, just that kneeling is biblically, it's a disposition of humility that just opens us up to to God. So.
One final, very practical note, it avoids the problem of particles, which can easily, end up on our hands, and if we're not attentive, we believe that even very small particles are Jesus himself, right? And so, if we're not attentive to that on our hands, then that could be very much so not good, right? Where Jesus is just kind of getting tossed about or whatever,
right?
So. With regards to extraordinary ministers, generally speaking, it's good if an ordinary minister, right, does it, priest or a deacon, right? But the church has allowed, right, that extraordinary ministers be used in extraordinary circumstances, right, when there's a great number of people, right? And what's a great number of people?
The church doesn't really specify, and probably for good reason, in her directives, how much is. At what point, at what number do you need, extraordinary ministers?
The number that we were kind of given in seminary, right, is about 100 people. That was it wasn't a fast rule. It was very clear that this wasn't a hard and fast rule. It was hey, if you're looking for maybe a gauge to use, and that's why, for instance, at Holy Ghost, we don't have extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, because there's usually not more than 100 people at any given Sunday Mass, and so feel very comfortable just having the ordinary minister do it. And so, however, the case is a little bit different at Notre Dame, where generally speaking there is more than, actually considerably more than 100 people at each Sunday Mass. Now, that doesn't mean that has to be the rule, right? You can do it either way. Now that we have our good deacon Kevin to cook with us, things can look a little bit differently, whatever, but I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, and sometimes a good point, and it's sometimes even just practically scheduling. When you have, if your congregation is of size to that where you could need them, people need a schedule, and they need to. So it's
cumbersome.
It's cumbersome, It's one of those things, and then at what point do they know or should they know that they don't really need to come forward?
Well, and then there's other practical considerations. This can all be cut out, I'm sure, but just of like when
you say that more time.
just like practically considering like how long does it take to purify the vessels that are extra and used, and like does it save that much time? I don't know. Like maybe it's more than that. Who knows? But anyways, sometimes there's precedence. It's a big factor too.
But the church's general sense, I mean, I think to go to what the person the person asking, and it's a right one, that there is a preference to I think to receive from an ordinary minister or the priest or deacon, ordinary versus extraordinary. Extraordinary meaning
not ordinary,
not the out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Although our extraordinary ministers are indeed extraordinary people, but
well played.